think everyone's experienced the point in a game where they just can't get past. You get stuck. Well, today I'm going to be counting down the top 10 places I got stuck in video games. For this list, I'm only going to be including games that are decently good. No shovelware or instances where you can't get past something due to a bug or glitch in the game. This is stuff that I either have never gotten past or took me years to finally get past. So let's begin.
Number 10.
I grew up playing the early Pokemon games on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. These games are not known for their difficulty because they were essentially made for kids. But Pokemon Silver had a point where the difficulty seemed to have spiked out of nowhere. Getting through Pokemon Blue and Yellow without too many issues, it was a big shock to me when I strolled into Goldenrod City and faced off against Whitney and her goddamn Miltank. I went in expecting the same old gym battle where you toss out a type advantage Pokemon, then slaughter every Pokemon in your path. But that all changed with Whitney. Her Miltank could not only fully heal itself, it could use a move called Rollout. Rollout only gets more and more powerful every single turn, so maybe you scraped by and survived its last attack, but if you take time to heal, it's going to kill you on its next attack. And once one of your Pokemon falls, the Rollout is now strong enough to take out all of your next Pokemon in a single attack. Miltank was a wall for me as a kid, especially since I never really used fighting or rock Pokemon back in the day. Instead of coming up with some sort of strategy, I ended up defaulting back onto my old Dragon Quest ways and just overleveling the shit out of my party to finally take her down. For being one of the earliest times I got stuck in a video game and not really being able to figure out a decent strategy at the time, Whitney makes it to number 10 on the list.
Number 9.
This is a much newer game than the last entry, but Seeker is a guy I had a lot of trouble with. Now, when you start this game, one of the earliest duels is against Kaiba, and it's you that has the Exodia deck. It's not a complete walk in the park to get the win here, but it's not very difficult either. But, when Seeker uses his properly named cheating Exodia deck, you're in big trouble. This battle, even with a really good deck, almost always comes down to complete luck. You have to draw the perfect cards from your deck in the early rounds, or Seeker will draw Exodia and win the match. The complete D-bag is known to toss countless pot of greeds, and can even win in his first turn before you get a chance to do anything. And it happens more often than you'd think. Seeker is a cheap, cheating, banned card using asshole that requires so many attempts just to get that perfect starting draw in order to have a chance of beating him. So he's cheated his way onto my list.
Number 8.
Like most kids in the early 90s, I loved the Ninja Turtles. So when I was at my parents' friend's place one night and saw this game on the shelf, I just had to play it. And honestly, I liked it. Of course I did. You could have put a turd in my hand back then and told me it was shadowed by a Ninja Turtle, and I would have loved it. I remember finding all the little tricks, like Donatello fucking up Rocksteady while safely out of reach, and even just walking over this greasy little gap. But that damn stage. The dam itself was a pain in the ass. What I couldn't figure out, however, was how to get past that damned underwater bomb electric seaweed clusterfuck. Look at this. Who'd have thought this was gonna be any fun at all? You've got to clumsily swim through these narrow waterways without touching the somehow electric seaweed and defuse these bullshit time bombs. Oh yeah, and there's also these other weeds that come up and grab you, causing a one-hit death. These things are infuriating! I've gotten past this part, and it was totally worth it because then you get to ride around in the badass turtle van. But with how difficult this dam segment is, and the small amount of times I've actually gotten past it, it deserves its spot at number 8.
Number 7.
Final Fantasy VIII gets a lot of flack from the JRPG community. Whether it be because of the characters or the drawing and junction system, people just don't like this game. But for me, this was my first real Final Fantasy experience. Sure, I had played 1 on the NES and 4 and 6 on the Super NES, but I was too young to know what was going on plot-wise. And for Final Fantasies 4 and 6, I just played them at someone else's house since I didn't grow up with a Super NES. It wasn't until Final Fantasy VIII had come out and I was sporting my badass new PlayStation that I had really gotten into the series. As far as I had known, the junction system was a regular thing for the later entries of the series, and once I could figure out and break that system, I loved it. As a teenager, however, the game always ended when I would arrive at Ultimisia Castle. You see, I grew up playing the Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior games on the NES, and the way to get strong in those classics is by grinding like crazy. So when I would get to Ultimisia Castle, my levels were usually too high, and when you lose all your junctioning abilities and the boss fights are all leveled up to your level, that shit is hard. It wasn't until last year, on stream, when I was playing the HD remastered version, that I was actually able to beat this game for the first time. And I did it with flair, beating the crap out of Omega Weapon on the way, with a little help from my boy, Gilgamesh.
Number 6.
Fun fact, Double Dragon 2 for the NES was the first game I ever played. I'll tell you the first time I ever got stuck in a game, but this isn't what made the list. My first time ever getting stuck in a video game was this ledge right here. This is pretty embarrassing, but I was 4 years old and my mom and I would play this game and neither of us could figure out how the hell to jump. A and B both attacked in their respective directions, and besides the D-pad and start and select, those were the only buttons we had. So it took us a while to figure out how to jump, and when we did, it was just by mashing all the buttons. There were a few times we would get hit by these punker ladies, and it would just knock us up over the ledge so we could make it to the first boss. But years later, the part I've always got stuck on is this damn platforming segment in Mission 6. You ride the cool-ass train after beating the shit out of Arnold Schwarzenegger and arrive at this mysterious damn mansion. The floors are lined with spikes, there's torches dripping with fire, and disappearing platforms everywhere. This place is a safety inspector's worst nightmare, but you've got to get your blue-vested ass to this door in order to progress through the game. This is a tough game to begin with, but this stage is a stage I've probably only beaten a handful of times. And like I said, I've been playing this game since I was 4 years old. For being hard enough to just jump in this game, to having tough disappearing platform segments where you can fall through the platforms on a regular basis, Mission 6's platforming segment definitely locks in its place at number 6.
Number 5.
Zombies Ate My Neighbors is a game I grew up loving, and much like a lot of the other games on this list, is a game I never beat until recently when I carried Fates' ass through it on his stream. Or maybe he dragged my ass through it, I can't quite remember. Either way, this game is super tough, and there are some stages that really stand out as having big difficulty spikes. For me, the gatekeeper was always level 20, Invasion of the Snakeoids. The stage involves these giant-ass sandworm-like creatures that you have to kill in order to unlock the door to rescue your neighbors and finish the stage. Normally, if you can get here without dying, taking these guys out isn't too bad of a task. But the problem with this game is that if you die or need to use a password to continue where you left off, you start with no weapons or items. The Snakeoids are absolutely impossible to take down with just the water pistol, which is why without the help of a seasoned Zombies Ate My Neighbors veteran like Fates, I have never been able to get past this level.
Number 4.
I've went into depth about my thoughts on the Final Fantasy XIII trilogy in a different video, so if you want to check that out here on my YouTube channel, go ahead. I'm not going to be going into depth about the game itself here. For most people, I heard Final Fantasy XIII doesn't get good until you get to Grand Pulse, but for me, I was enjoying it until Grand Pulse. If nothing else, up until this point, Final Fantasy XIII had structure. You always knew where to go, who to fight, and how to get there. Grand Pulse took all that and chucked it out the window. Once you arrive, you're greeted by enemies with huge variances of level gaps, some of which will one-hit kill you no matter what, and some that you can take down with ease. The problem here is the size of this place and the fact that you're going to get your shit wrecked, bad and often, even once you've reached this game's bullshit level cap. The amount of unnecessary grinding that Grand Pulse requires is completely ridiculous, and even after spending 10 hours grinding and hitting the temporary level cap, I was unable to beat the boss that you need to beat in order to get out of this place and continue on with the game. Maybe it's the battle system, maybe it's the level caps, or maybe it's just me. But this fourth entry on the list, we're now getting into places where I got stuck and to this day have never gotten past.
Number 3.
Man, I was so excited when I got Driver for the PlayStation 1. There weren't many, if any, open-world driving games like this at the time. Driver was being regarded as the best driving game ever made when it came out, and I couldn't wait to play the shit out of this bad boy. But the problem was that in order to actually play the story mode of the game, you would have to pass the in-game driver's test. Yes, it's the driver's test itself that made it to number 3 on the list. Games today get ripped on for having way too much tutorial garbage during the beginning of the game, but Driver just tossed you to the wolves right off the bat. With no explanations of how to do any of these moves, I was stuck here, indefinitely. I didn't even know what the fuck slaloming was until I played this game. If it wasn't for Take a Ride mode, I never would have been able to experience this game at all. For putting such an incredibly difficult segment at the start of the game, Driver for PS1 takes the number 3 position on the list.
Number 2.
Contra Hardcore was the first Contra game I ever played. I remember getting it for my birthday one year. I was a huge fan of Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger films growing up, so one look at this cover made me want to play it so bad. I popped a cartridge in my Genesis and played as Fang, a badass wolf cyborg hybrid, and started gunning down endless amounts of robots and cyborgs. It took a lot of tries, but I was able to get to the junkyard stage, and that is as far as I've ever gotten without using cheats. This game is notoriously hard right from the get-go, so by the time you reach the junkyard, you're probably running thin on lives or even continues. But it isn't the stage itself that's been a brick wall in my path to completion, it's this D-bag hacker named Neumann. Yes, Neumann. Neumann is such a cowardly prick that you don't actually fight him, but a series of virtual reality boss fights that he controls. Not only is this boss sequence incredibly difficult, but it's also incredibly long. So long, in fact, that for years I thought I was getting so close to beating him, but no. When Finny and I ran through this game using the Game Genie with infinite lives, we got past these tough-as-nails Constellation bosses, only to face another hard-as-hell boss fight. It felt so good taking this prick down, but then he tells you that he was just taking orders, and that the real baddies have already infiltrated your base. Damn it, Neumann!
Number 1.
You knew it had to be on this list, but you didn't know where. I think anyone who's played Battletoads for the NES has been stuck here, and like me, possibly indefinitely. If it wasn't for YouTube or speedrunners on Twitch, I don't think I'd have ever seen what comes after the Turbo Tunnel in Battletoads. I even have the Nintendo Power magazine with the full map and tips of the Turbo Tunnel. Not even that is enough to get me through this speedy balls fest of a stage. I remember for years not even being able to jump from segment to segment without falling to my death for some reason. This stage has some weird ass jumping shit, but that's not even the part that has me permanently stuck. It's the damn jet bike segment where you've got to zigzag and jump all over the place at the speed of light in order to dodge 50 billion walls and death ball pits. I don't know if the game gets any harder than this because I've never made it out of the Turbo Tunnel alive. For being incredibly difficult, even with the most detailed of guides, and having me stuck here since I was a kid, the Turbo Tunnel from Battletoads on the NES secures its spot as the number 1 place I got stuck. Now I've got a few honorable mentions, so don't leave just yet, but first, please be sure to help me out by clicking that like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also catch me live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Dookie03 about 3 times a week. Some honorable mentions I'd like to shed some light on would have to be the Blizzardy Mountain stages in the original Donkey Kong Country. I've beaten them before, but get stuck every time and usually just quit and start over the next time I play it. With the blinding blizzard combined with the precise barrel shots and platforming, this shit can really test your patience. Another tough spot for me has been the post-Tickington side quest boss fights in Dragon Quest XI's on the Switch. You have to fight new incarnations of all the previous Dragon Quest game final bosses. This is fine and all until you have to fight 3 or even 4 of them in a row, or at the same time without being given a chance to recover. This shit is hard, but I love it. The last thing I'd like to mention is an incredibly embarrassing part for me. The goddamn dojo at the start of Double Dragon 3. As you now know, I grew up playing Double Dragon 2, so when I went to my uncle's place and saw that he had Double Dragon 3 for the NES, I was super excited to play it. Little did I know, Double Dragon 3 is ridiculously hard! I couldn't even get out of the dojo that the game starts in until I was an adult, and even then, I can't get to the first boss! I would just get the absolute shit kicked out of me by regular grunts at the very start of the game! Fates and Smo, the gamers with guts, have beaten this game live on stream and find it hilarious that I would continuously get wrecked in the dojo. So now I always joke that once you get out of the dojo, you've beaten the game, everything else is just post-game content. I hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, and have a great day.